Hey everyone, Tyler here at The Movie Beat, back with another video. I wanted to take this opportunity to share with you guys my reaction, my thoughts on some of the Wong Kar-wai 4K restorations that I've had the great pleasure, privilege, luck, and opportunity to have been able to see these in the theaters here in South Korea, because it seems like South Koreans really appreciate this director. They really kind of have an affinity for Hong Kong cinema in general, I think. At least my generation and a bit older maybe grew up on some of that cinema in the 80s and 90s. So a lot of people know actors like Tony Leung, Leslie Chung, Jackie Chan, Bruce Lee. I mean, it's pretty popular. Chow Yun-fat. So the Wong Kar-wai films are doing very well in cinemas right now. And also, I am a big Blu-ray collector, and I love Blu-ray and owning films at home in my personal library. So I have been on the fence about picking up the 4K restoration Criterion set of these Wong Kar-wai films for a while now, just because of some of the reaction that I've heard with the tweaks, the revisionist that kind of went into some of them. And I think a lot of us are pretty concerned with it, especially if we have seen these films and we love them. We've seen them so many times. And so I wanted to kind of just add some food for thought into this discussion, as the Criterion set is set to release in just a couple of days. There is also a Nova Media box set from South Korea on the way, and I did get word from that Blu-ray store manager, the one that we visited in ET Land a week or so ago. She did tell me that it's coming, and she wanted to know if I was interested in it or not. So that is good news to know that it is right around the corner. I do strongly feel that Nova Media is waiting, whether it's like a contractual agreement and for the theater run to finish and get all of the ticket sales and everything that they can out of it. And like I said, because it's so popular, I believe the In the Mood for Love came out in January-ish. And I actually didn't get a chance to see that one, but it's they're still showing them, and it is very strong. I'll show you some pictures. The theaters here are going all out in how they're presenting these 4K restorations. So it's pretty awesome. It kind of felt like I was at Disneyland in the Wong Kar-wai park for a little bit. So I did see 3 of them, and I think 3 of these are some of them that have maybe the most concern with some of the rework that went into them. Again, In the Mood for Love is separate. And the other reason I'm on the fence is because I have bought all of Wong Kar-wai's films so many times and upgraded from DVD to DVD to DVD, eventually to Blu-ray, and I do have all of them on Blu-ray right now. So a little show and tell before we get into some of my reaction. I do have the In the Mood for Love Criterion set. I did not see the 4K restoration of this, but from everything that I am going to tell you, I am not super worried, and I'm also very glad at the same time that I have this, just in case, because I haven't seen this one in the theaters. I have the Chungking Express. I believe this was the first Blu-ray put out by Criterion. This is like a digipack edition, so that one's fine. I did actually see the restoration of this, so I'll give you some comments on that. I also have the North American Kino Happy Together Blu-ray, as well as the Fallen Angels Blu-ray, same label. Both beautiful. Also, a little bit unfortunate that this wasn't part of the whole Wong Kar-wai restoration. It was his most recent, the Grandmaster. I have the Hong Kong edition, the full-length version, must own, as well as I think 2 definitive Blu-rays for some of his films, both Korean editions. Days of Being Wild. Definitely, if you were just to pick up one of his films and you weren't getting any sets, this is like the perfect release, I think, of this film, as well as one of my favorites. I love this full slipcase of As Tears Go By. Again, a Korean edition. So I believe both of these are still available. And I also have, did I show this? the Korean edition of 2046. I don't think a lot of people are too concerned about this remaster, and I'm definitely planning to see it, but there aren't any major tweaks that I've heard about or am expecting when I do go to see it in the theaters. So let's get into my reaction on these films. So first of all, if you guys have been following my channel, you saw that I did get to check out Chungking Express on my birthday, and it was definitely one of the most amazing film theater experiences that I've ever had, just because I love this movie so much. Even when I was in university or in high school, even when I had to list one movie as like my favorite movie, this was an easy go-to, something to jot down. Sometimes your film teachers would ask, just they want to get a sense of who their students are. I just say Chungking Express just to get myself over into East Asia. And this was also really before or right at the beginning of when I was getting into Korean cinema. So this was a really important movie for me and my history of film. So glad to see it. Let's get into it. Detail and clarity have never been better. The Blu-ray, if you have it, is amazing. So how could it get any better? It can. My only contention is that there is a bit of a green tint to the film. And if you guys are familiar with Wong Kar-wai works, you know that this director likes to do that himself. So like things like Days of Being Wild, there is an intended green tint to the film. This one I do feel like is, however, more on the remastering side. So much like when I saw the My Sassy Girl 4K remastering, I did notice a very greenish kind of hue that I wasn't, it wasn't part of my memory of this film. And on one side, yeah, everything else, the definition of the clarity, the detail was so much better, but it does affect some of those like primary colors. So the yellow that you would see like Bae Wong wear on her t-shirt, or the blue from Tony Leung's police uniform, they don't stand out as much, so there is less pop there. But I do think overall the trade-off was worth it, just in how good everything else looks. So the next thing is that the first time that the California Dreamin' song comes on, when Faye Wong's putting it in the boombox at the in the kitchen at the restaurant, it seemed like it was a little bit like less pronounced, like it was in the background more. I was really waiting for it to just come on. I couldn't wait to hear it. I'm like, where is it? It sounds like it's missing a channel or something, and I don't remember that. So the good news is, because this song is played so many times in the movie, as the film goes on, that problem solved itself. It did start to get more pronounced, and I don't know if that was an intended tweak to just kind of ramp up the energy and everything towards the end of the film, but it was one thing that I was like, whoa, that's not the great way to introduce the song. But yeah, it gets fine later. And the scene when Tony Leung is taking the slow sip of coffee, as he's pondering that letter that he's received, and whether to open it or not, maybe, you do actually hear in this remastered version the Cranberries' Dreams cover that Faye Wong beautifully sings in this movie actually comes on at that moment. And I was like, wait, what? This is the wrong time. Like, that's supposed to be used in the cleaning montage, and only there. So I was a little bit defensive when I first heard that. It don't get me wrong, it works here. It's really nice. But like I said, when you and I, we have these films that we love so much, we've seen so many times, if they're tweaked with or something is different, like I get a little bit defensive. Something inside of me like, no, doesn't want it. But the interesting thing is, I watched this movie with somebody that I hope to introduce to you guys further down the road, but it was her first experience with Wong Kar-wai, and she actually told me at the end of the movie that that was her favorite scene. So I think perhaps moving forward that this could be a very good change. Overall, it's just one that's hard to look at through the lens of being a fan and having it be new. So I think that's an interesting tidbit. But I was like, really, the thing that they changed, that's your favorite part? But think about it, like it's a cool moment overall. So I am very much looking forward to getting the Chungking Express 4K remaster. I was like, am I just gonna be putting this disc in every time I still watch it? Really thinking about my money, my budget. Is it worth it just for the package? Of course, I want the package, but is it worth it. I got to make big decisions. I'm going for it. Okay, so 4K disc chunking, we got it. We're getting it. Second movie that I was so grateful to see, I saw it when I took that trip to Emu Art Cinema, Happy Together. This one, from my memory, has a very peculiar or standout saturation to its image quality that I think really connects with some of the identity that this film has, at least in my memory. I love the look of this movie, whether it's in their apartment or outside, in the Tango Bar. I love all of the colors. So when I heard in some of the Blu-ray reviews of the new set that the saturation levels were reduced, I was like, whoa, no, they didn't. Like, you're going to make this movie, like, all muted looking? No worry. Okay, so I think if you take a screen-by-screen comparison, you're more likely to go for that, like, super saturated one just because it's so beautiful. I mean, this movie was shot. I love the cinematography and everything. But overall, once you see this movie from beginning to end, I think the saturation in the remastered version is much more appropriate, and it's still, all things considered, pretty saturated, just not as much as it was on this version of it. So this one, I was really concerned. I'm like, this disc is going to be so valuable and I don't want to lose it. I'm always going to put this disc in, even if I get the new set. I don't think that's the case. I really loved how this new version looks overall. Again, I don't want to sound like a broken record. Just the detail, the clarity, all of that was a boost. So, I mean, like I said, this already looks amazing. How could it get any better? It can. So I think they tweaked some of the black and white as well. And it's going to kind of carry into my Fallen Angels reaction. But the black and white in this film, every time I revisit it, I always think, wow, it's a little bit more than I remembered. I think that's kind of a good thing. But it felt like in this one, less a stylistic choice and much more in line with some of the themes and story aspect of the film. Again, like in Fallen Angels, a little bit more. So overall, I think any changes that were made to some of the black and white in this was helpful in its narrative. So very, very fine with it. So moving into Fallen Angels, let's go with that black and white point first. Fallen Angels, they did, of course, also change some of those black and white scenes. And I think in Fallen Angels, it's much more stylized because it's way more pronounced. So the contrast levels are much deeper. And that goes into the tone of the film, which was nice. They also played with some of the colors. So maybe like the television or the jukebox in a black and white scene has color. And when I saw some of those screenshots or those still images, I was like, yeah, you can do that, but why? Are you doing that just to play? Are you just playing with the film? It looks really cool, so don't worry about it. I think the biggest concern overall with this film is the reframing. I mean, just how dare you? This is Christopher Doyle, one of my favorite cinematographers and one of my favorite favorite films, at least visually speaking, ever. Don't you dare lose any information. I was very, very worried about this going in, especially because the original framing, the 185-1, already, because of a lot of the wide angle that is used in this film, the edges will have some distortion. It's always had that. Even on this one, it has that. So if you're going to change this aspect ratio to 235-1, and so you're going to crop the top and bottom, and you're going to somehow widen the edges even more, that distortion is going to be even more pronounced. So that was one thing I was really worried about going in. And I got to say, right off the bat, my experience with this film was through the roof, better than I could have ever imagined it. And I think that's partly because I was in the theater, but I do feel like this new framing gave it another type of vibe. I'll go into that in a little bit. So first of all, I was looking for the distortions a lot, but because this film is so wide now, and on such a big screen, you don't get that much of a chance to examine the edges, because the way that this film is framed, there's so much information in the center. You're busy, so I really did not have a problem with anything on the side. And when I did look for it in a lot of like static shots where I could really see a face over there, it wasn't bad at all. I think there was maybe 1 or 2 shots in general where I felt like I was missing information. Like they cut off her forehead, like 1 or 2 only, which was very surprising because I was looking for it the whole time. And it felt like everything was just framed perfectly. I do know that there is information lost. It did not come across for most of the movie. I think that this is going to be an issue, however, when it comes to watching this at home because our TV sets are obviously so much smaller. Depending on what kind of setup that you guys have. I mean, if you're watching this in the right format, if your TV's formatted correctly regardless, you're going to have black bars at the top and the bottom when this new version. And when you can see all of the information, without really having to move your head too much, that sense of the distortion, that sense of lost information, I think is going to be poking at us. It's going to be a lot more evident, and it'll be on our minds much more because we're not fully immersed. And I'm a little bit concerned about it. But the theater version, I feel like the new compactness of the framing added to a sense of a little bit of claustrophobia, which was kind of cool for this film because, it plays into some of the underground elements of its narrative. And I feel like it made some of the earlier shootouts more tense. So I think that, unlike maybe George Lucas, who really had the home market in mind, I got the sense that Wong Kar-wai had the theater experience in mind. So when they were tweaking this, I'm like, he must be in a theater somewhere and be like, yes, now it looks good. So I'm very worried about watching this on a smaller set. I have a 55-inch TV, and my room is really small, so I actually sit pretty close to it. So I'm not so worried, but I am worried about other people who, have decent distance from their set, and you see the black, and you're going to feel like maddened a little bit. But who knows, maybe not. This was one that I was like, this is going to be my forever. I'm never replacing this disc. I got to wait and see. But I am very excited for it now rather than concerned because I loved my experience in the theaters. Again, it sounds better than I ever could have imagined. It was just, it's definitely one of the best soundtracks ever. I love it. Sounded so good. There's also a black and white change at the beginning of the end sequence of this film, which I think is a little bit controversial, but it does actually play into the film's themes a bit more. The black and white is the disconnectedness parts, the isolation, loneliness, and the first time I saw this film, I was like, well, this black and white was more stylistic, just to look cool in certain parts, but like and happy together, the black and white shifts have much more of a meaning now that it's consistent with the emotion that's coming across in those scenes. So I gotta say it was fine, and it makes that final drive through the tunnel even more powerful because snap back into color. And I just gotta say, you guys, if you are fans of this director and you are on the fence about this set, hopefully my words here today will reassure you or soothe those fears just a little bit, because I had such a good experience with these remasterings, and I am now convinced that I'm going to pick up one of the sets. I personally am going to wait for the Nova release. Like I said, it's probably going to be announced right after the theater run of all of these restorations are done here in Korea. So let me know what you guys think about the remasters, if you've seen them, or how you're going to go about picking up these remasters or adding them into your collection. Do you have any of these old ones that you are so glad you still have? Are you going to finally be getting one of the films on Blu-ray for the first time ever? Something like that. Let me know what you guys are thinking. Are you going to get the Nova? Are you going to get the Criterion? Both? Neither? Anything at all? So hopefully this video is helpful. Until next time, I'm Tyler here at The Movie Beat. Keep watching movies.